Elle Edwards' shocking death. The gang war behind the tragedy. Throughout her life, Elle Edwards was a shining example of joy and kindness. When she was only 26 years old, she had already established a name for herself as a lady who was kind, empathetic, and full of life. By profession, she was a beautician, a line of work that she cherished and excelled in. Her relatives and friends said that she was the kind of person who could make any room brighter simply by being there. Her laughter was contagious, her heart was genuine, and her future was full of promise. Aspirations, dreams, and a community that cherished her were all things that she possessed. Not only was it shocking, but it was also extremely unjust that she would be taken away in such a violent and unexpected manner. Ella was participating in a celebration with her friends at the Lighthouse Inn in Wallasey Village on the evening of Christmas Eve in the year 2022. There was music, laughter, and the warmth of close companionship in the festive mood, which was exactly the kind of event that many people look forward to during the holiday season. Over the course of several years, however, a gloomy undercurrent had been developing beneath the surface of that delight. As was the case in many other parts of the United Kingdom, the streets of Wallasey had been left scarred as a result of the increasing gang conflicts and the consistent spread of the illegal drug trade. And despite the fact that Ella was a long way from that world, she would soon find herself in a situation where she would be tragically entwined in it. Few individuals who were present at the pub could have possibly expected the turmoil that was about to break out as the evening progressed and the clock got closer to midnight. There in the parking lot, Connor Chapman was waiting with his weapon drawn and his resolve unwavering. He had Jake Duffy, a prominent member of the Beechwood Gang, as his target. The Beechwood Gang is infamous for its control over the drug distribution scene in the area. It was Chapman's intention to eliminate Duffy as a power move in a violent game of control. Duffy was perceived by Chapman as both a competitor and a threat. But what Chapman neglected to take into account was the presence of other people who were not guilty in the vicinity. When Chapman started fire, he released a storm of bullets in a public location, and he did it with little concern for anyone else who was in the vicinity. The act of shooting was both horrifying and audacious. Ella Edwards was standing outside the pub when she was wounded by a bullet during the flurry of gunfire. Jake Duffy, on the other hand, was able to escape the scene without suffering any injuries. There was no time for her to respond, and she had no recourse for self-defense. Her evening, which had been filled with excitement, was suddenly overtaken with a sense of fear. Despite the speed with which emergency services came, it was already too late. At the scene, Ella was certified as having passed away. Not only did this event represent the end of her life, but it also marked the beginning of a bitter reckoning for an entire community during that hour. Immediately following Ella's passing, there was a profound sense of loss and a growing sense of fury. The fact that her murder was so pointless made it feel even more awful than it already did. A woman who had no involvement in any criminal activity and was merely spending the evening with her friends had her life taken away as a result of a dispute that she had nothing to do with. Instantaneous and emotional reactions were seen from the general populace. There were vigils conducted. Outside of the tavern where she passed away, floral tributes began to grow. The portrait of a cherished daughter, sister, and friend was painted by the flood of condolences, photos, and memories that were shared on social media throughout the day. As soon as the police started their inquiry, the truth of what had occurred became considerably more apparent. As quickly as possible, detectives began collecting surveillance footage and conducting interviews with witnesses. According to their findings, the shooting was part of a turf battle between competing drug gangs, which was something that many people had worried happen. It was obvious that Chapman had the intention of carrying out the crime, as he was already known to the authorities for his involvement in trafficking and other violent crimes. At first, he denied any responsibility for the incident. Nevertheless, forensic evidence, which included the CCTV footage and the weapon that was used, constructed an unconquerable case against him. The subsequent trial was drawn out and excruciating, particularly for Ella's family that was involved. They were required to sit in court and relive the unfortunate events that led to the death of their loved one. As the prosecutors informed them of Chapman's intention to eliminate Jake Duffy as a rival, they listened attentively as they explained how Duffy had arrived armed and prepared to kill. The witnesses recalled the horrific moment the bullets rang out and how Ella, who was doing nothing more than standing outside with friends, it was decided that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars, with a minimum sentence of 40 years before he could ever be considered for parole. Even if it was significant, the sentence could never make up for the sorrow that it inflicted. Despite the fact that the judgment brought Ella's family some measure of closure, it did not make their loss any less painful. The gap that she left behind was hard to fill, and her absence was too large to be filled. Conversations regarding gang culture and drug crime began to take on a new level of seriousness after the conviction was handed down. Not only should there be a more stringent enforcement of the law, but there should also be a greater investment in prevention. Community leaders, police officials, and local politicians all spoke about the necessity of long-term change. One of the most difficult issues that people started asking was, why are young men joining gangs? Why are neighborhoods like Wallasey becoming battlegrounds over territory controlled by drug cartels? What measures may be taken by society to prevent individuals such as Ella from incurring collateral damage in conflicts that they did not choose? Despite the fact that they were overcome with sadness, Ella's family became outspoken supporters for the change to a life of crime. They desired for Ella's passing to have some significance, to act as a driving force contributing to a more secure future. Despite the fact that the story of Ella Edwards is a tragedy, it is also a mirror of the failings that are more widespread in society. Neither gangs nor drug activity were a part of her life. This was not the intended aim. She was a victim of a system in which violence has become so pervasive among competing criminal factions that it has become a common language, and where the lives of innocent people are increasingly in danger. The story of Ella brings to light the destruction that may be caused by violence and the pressing necessity of tearing down the institutions that make it possible for it to perpetuate itself. Despite the passage of time, Ella's memories will live on. Not only has her name become a topic of conversation, but it has also become a symbol of something that must never be allowed to occur again. Their suffering has been transformed into a sense of purpose, and her loved ones continue to commemorate her life via their actions. It is not the manner in which she passed away that is remembered in her community. Rather, it is the way in which she lived, which was filled with light, joy, and compassion. The passing of Ella Edwards was not only a personal tragedy for those who knew and loved her, but it was also a loss for the community as a whole and a wake-up call for the entire nation. As a reminder of the innocent lives that are at stake in the fight against organized crime, her narrative needs to be kept in the public consciousness for as long as possible. This should serve as a wake-up call for society to reconsider its methods to assistance, justice, and prevention. In the first place, it is a call to make sure that the same thing that happened to Ella does not happen to anyone else. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel